This video will present about the self-regulated personalized online learning system for learning factorization in mathematics. First of all, I would like to mention about the problems that bring me to study this topic. Because as what we know, in the typical classroom setting, we have a different kind of learning style of the students, so it's very hard for the teachers to deliver the appropriate learning tool for everyone at one time. So to cope with this problem, we consider on two main points. The first one is how we can deliver the environment as to be the online environment, which can be served the personalized. In short, we can call like the personalized online system. And the another one is about the self-regulated learning, which is the way that help their student to be able to regulate themselves to compete in online learning system. So there is come up with the idea to develop the self-regulated personalized online learning system, or we call in short as SPALS, to learning mathematics and the content of integers and quadratic polynomial factorization. This is an example of the development learning system that I mentioned before. Next, we also have another features that including in the development learning system. Come to the methodology. This study is a quasi-experimental, which means that we divide the students who participate in this study into two groups. The first one is the experimental group, which means the student will participate in our developed learning system or SPAL. And another group is conventional group, which means to the student who use the conventional personalized online learning system. Or you can simply understand that this group of the student will participate in the system which not including the self-regulated features like what I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. We have two main things that we would like to measure as what I present into the research questions. The first one is learning achievements, and another one is the perception of their ability in online self-regulated. The process of using is provided on the left-hand side of the screen. The result point out that for the learning achievement, we analyze the score that we get from the student in three parts. The first one we call as the total score, which means that we sum the score that we get from the integer content and the quadratic polynomial content. The second one, so we analyze just only the score that we get from the integer content. And the last one, we analyze the score that we get from the quadratic polynomial content. As well, you can see the result point out that after we adjust for the p-test score, there shows a significant difference in the total post-test score and the polynomial post-test score between who in the experimental group and conventional group. However, they have no significant difference in the integer content. After we look in depth, we will see that the main difference between these two groups show that the student who in the experimental group will perform than the student who in the conventional group. For the second finding is about the perception of the student in online self-regulation. We would like to see that whether they use the different kind of online learning system is that effect to their self-regulated ability or not. And another one is about the time. Since we are the student to letting score on the questionnaire 3 times, so we would like to see that during the time difference, is there any effect to their self-regulated ability or not? Right now, so we conduct two-way repeated measure ANOVA, and the result point out that there was no significant interaction between the intervention and the time on student perception on self-regulated ability. When we separately consider, we will find that in the intervention, they show a significant difference between those who use SPALS and PULSE. And for the student who use SPALS, I mean the student who in the experimental group is have the higher score in self-regulated ability than those who in PULSE or in the conventional group. And when we consider in another variable, which is the time, the result point out that they show significant difference from P and post score, and also when the letting score from mid to post as well. Or the conclusion is can summarize into T point. The first one, the total and polynomial post-test score are statistically significant between students who in the experimental group and conventional group, but for the integer post-test score are not significant. The second point is that when we do the pairwise comparison, we found that students in the experimental group did better than those who in the conventional group. Even for the integer post-test score did not show any significant difference, but students who in the experimental group still get the better score than those who in the conventional group. And the last one is about the student perception on their self-regulated ability. There was no any interaction between intervention and the time on their self-regulated ability. The results show that the student who in the experimental group rating score higher than those who in the conventional group. So there is all of my study. Thank you for your attention.